If you want to learn how to use OpenClaw and build real production-ready agents, then you're at the perfect place. Because in this project-based course, we're going to go from zero to building real systems that can actually automate things for you. We're going to start by setting up OpenClaw from scratch, so even if you have never touched OpenClaw before, this is the perfect place to start. After that, we're going to cover all the core concepts that you need to know to effectively use OpenClaw. And from there, we'll jump straight into the projects. Our first project is going to be a Gmail inbox triage system, which will automatically organize and respond to your emails without you having to do anything. I'll also be showing you guys how to make your setup super secure, so it's completely protected against things like prompt injection or API leaks and all that stuff. In our next project, we're going to build a fully functioning voice AI agent that can automatically call people on your behalf. For example, instead of you calling a barber to book an appointment, OpenClaw will handle that entire conversation for you. All you need to do is give OpenClaw the number of the person that you want to call and why you want to call them, and it should handle everything from there. And in the third project, we're going to build a daily news summarizer so you can stay up to date with all the news without wasting any time scrolling through your phone every single day at 9 a.m. It's going to send you an update with all the news tailored to you specifically, and it's an extremely practical use case for OpenClaw. And by the end of this course, after making all these projects, you won't just understand OpenClaw, you'll have built systems that are actively going to save you time, automate real tasks, and can even be turned into products. So without any further ado, let's jump in and get started. Alright, so before we actually get started with setting up OpenClaw, we want to first understand what exactly it is and why we're using it in the first place. So OpenClaw at its core is basically just an LLM which runs automatically. It runs with a loop. You can, do things automatically with it, and that is what makes it really powerful. You can connect it to different tools and you can have it autonomously do tasks while you're away from your computer. So think of it like ChatGPT or Claude, for example, but it automatically does things in the background and you don't really have to interact with it all the time. And the best part is that once you've set it up, you can communicate with it via WhatsApp, Telegram, Discord, whatever messaging app you use, you can communicate with it using that. Apart from that, this is an open source software, which means that you can self-host it. So you don't have to pay like any subscription fees to OpenClaw or anything like that. And we're going to talk about, how to host it and where to host it in just a bit. But for now, just understand that it is an open source software. It's completely free and you can customize it to do pretty much whatever you want in the background. So the way it works is actually pretty simple as well. Assuming this is you and you have a messaging app on your phone, for example, WhatsApp, OpenClaw basically sits in between your messaging app and your AI model. So your AI model can be Claude, GPT, whatever your AI model is, and you can connect it to different things. So for example, your email, your calendar, you can have it do web search, you can connect it to different files and stuff, and you can use that data, use information from those sources and perform different tasks using your AI. It is important to note that OpenClaw has complete access to your computer, which makes it really powerful, but at the same time, it poses a huge security risk as well. So we want to make sure that we set up OpenClaw in the most secure way possible, but don't worry, we're going to cover all of that in this course later on. I also briefly want to mention what exactly you can do with it just to get you guys excited and just to, show you guys some possibilities with OpenClaw. So the first example here is a morning briefing. So imagine if you wake up every day at 8 a.m. and instead of looking at all your emails, looking at your calendar, your news separately, you just have all that summarized into a text message from OpenClaw. It just reads everything, gathers all the information, and just gives you a daily update of sorts. Now, I don't know about you, but for me personally, it does simplify my mornings quite a bit. I don't have to go through all my emails separately and everything, right? It can also draft and automatically send emails. It can interact with your files. It can even write code and build you apps and stuff. We're going to cover all that in just a bit. So now we're going to talk about some things that we need to do before we actually set it up. The first decision that you're going to have to make is, where do you want to host it? Do you want to host it locally on a Linux or a Mac, or you want to host it on a VPS? Now, there's no universal answer for this. Everybody is going to have different preferences. Now, to be honest, my recommendation for you guys would be, if you are a beginner, definitely go with the VPS because the initial cost is much lower. You obviously don't have to buy a separate computer. You just pay a small monthly fee and then you can access it for however long you want. However, if you do have an extra computer just laying around, you can definitely use it and run it locally. However, do note that your OpenClaw server is going to be dependent on whether or not you have electricity, and also you're going to have to pay more electricity bills as well. So just keep that in mind and make a decision based on that. However, if you're a beginner, the better option is definitely going with the VPS. One thing you definitely don't want to do is run it on your main computer, because OpenClaw still has a lot of security vulnerabilities, and also just AI in general has potential of being hacked by prompt injection or something like that. So definitely I wouldn't recommend you to run it on your main computer. And even if you talk about things like email, for example, you do want to make sure that you make separate email accounts or separate Twitter account, for example, for your OpenClaw. Make sure to not give it any of your actual credentials credentials. We are going to cover some ways to make it more secure, but it still is not perfect. Next up, what we're going to have to do is we have to connect a messaging platform. In this course, we're going to cover how to connect Telegram with it because that's the most straightforward, but you can definitely connect WhatsApp and Discord. They should be pretty simple as well. You can find plenty of guides for that on YouTube. The third thing we're going to have to do is connect an AI backend. So basically, we're going to have to get some credits on, say, GPT or Claude or Gemini or any other LLM. We're going to have to get some credits, and then we're going to have to get their API key. I'm going to be showing you guys how to do that for OpenAI and Claude, both of them. So if you're using either of them, you should be good to go. And lastly, we're going to configure it and, enable some tools and add custom skills and just extend what OpenClaw can do. So we're going to cover all that in this course. And because this is the project-based course, we are going to be building some practical projects as well. So stay tuned for that. But I think that should be enough of an intro. I hope you guys are excited. Let's go ahead and get started with setting up OpenClaw. All right, guys. So here I am on Hostinger, and Hostinger is what we're going to be using to basically set up our VPS first, which is a virtual server. And then on that virtual server, we're going to be setting up Moltbot. So you're going to have to go to the link in the description to go to Hostinger. And once you're on there, just go to services and then VPS hosting. So once you click that, you're going to be taken to this page. And if you scroll down to the plans, you can see that their plans are really, really affordable, making Hostinger one of the cheapest and easiest ways to host Moltbot. So the KVM 2 plan is going to be sufficient for most people out there. It has 2 CPU cores, 8 gigs of RAM, 100 gigabytes of space, and 8 terabytes of bandwidth. But to be honest, if you're on a budget and you want to just try it out, you can also go with KVM 1 as well. Just try it out, see if you like it, and then you can upgrade to the higher versions. But once you've decided the plan you want to get, just click choose plan, and that's going to take you to the checkout page. Now, if you get it for 2 years, it's going to give you the best value. You're going to be saving the most amount of money. However, you can also try it with the 1-year plan. And if the price wasn't great already, you can also use my coupon code NAFE3D for an additional 20% off. So that's even better. Once that is done, you can just select your server. So just select the location that is closest to you. And in the operating system, we're just going to keep it simple and just select Ubuntu. That should be good enough for us. The version that I'm going to select is going to be 24.04 LTS, and then press confirm. So once that is done, you can just press continue, and it's going to ask you to create an account and also pay for the VPS. After all that is done, it's going to ask you to set up a root password. Make sure to save this somewhere else because we're going to need this in just a bit. Once that is done, press next, and you can take these additional features if you'd like. I'm just going to uncheck them because we don't really need them. And finally, press finish setup. Once that is done, it's going to take a bit to just set up your VPS, and it's going to take a couple minutes. So I'll see you guys when it's done. All right. So once that is done, you're going to see this screen. Just click manage VPS, and it's going to take you to your dashboard where you can see everything about your VPS. This is where you'll see all your statistics, your users data, and everything about your VPS. But the thing that we're mainly interested in is this root access. And the reason for that is because this is going to allow us to access this VPS from our local terminal. So basically, we're going to be using command prompt or, Windows PowerShell to access this virtual machine and write code in it. So the way we're going to be doing that is by copying this, and I'm going to go to my start menu and search for PowerShell, Windows PowerShell, and then paste it in like that. And then just press enter. It's going to tell you that the authenticity of this host cannot be established. The reason for that is because our computer has never seen this host before. Just type yes, and that should be good. Now it's going to ask you for your password. This is the password that we just said a few minutes ago when we were setting up our VPS, and you're not going to see it being pasted in, but just press Ctrl V and press enter. It should work. And now you can see that we are inside of our VPS. Now, once that is done, we can go ahead and install Moltbot. So the way we do that is basically by going to the Moltbot website. Just go to molt.bot. And here we're going to scroll down to quick start right here. And you can basically just copy this one-line command, and that is going to install Moltbot for you. However, this is the Windows command, so I'm just going to change this to macOS/Linux because our VPS is actually running Linux, and then go back to your PowerShell and just paste it in like that. And just like that, Moltbot is going to be installed in your computer. Now, this is going to take, I think, from 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how fast your computer and internet connection is. And so I'll see you guys when it's done. So Moltbot has been installed, and now they're going to take us through an onboarding process. So first of all, obviously, we understand that this is a powerful and risky tool. We still want to continue? Yes, we do. Onboarding mode can just be quick start. After that, you're going to have to select your model. So I'm just going to go with an OpenAI model because I do have an API key already. However, you can obviously choose pretty much any model that you want. So just press enter. And then I'm going to be entering my OpenAI API key. All right, now if you don't have your API key, it is pretty simple to get. I'll be showing you guys how to get an API key for OpenAI and also Claude. So for OpenAI, you're just going to come to openai.com/API. Once you're here, you can just click login and API platform. And here you can create an account. I already do have an account created, so I'm not going to be going through that process. Once you have that done, you can go to settings. And then you're going to have to go to billing and add some credits first. So you can just click add to credit balance. You can enter your card details and add some balance. I think $5 is the minimum. But once that is done, you can go down to API keys. So you can just click create new secret key, name it whatever. I'm just going to say test and create new secret key. and then it's going to show you your API key right there. So you can just copy this, treat it like a password, don't show it to anyone, and also save it somewhere else because this is the last time you're going to be seeing it on the OpenAI website. It's not going to show you after this, but that's how you get your OpenAI key. And now I'll show you how to get it for Claude. So for Claude, just search for Claude API, and then you can go to platform.claude.com and just go in there, sign in. And the process here is really similar as well. Just go to API keys and then go to billing, add your billing information and buy some credits, then go to API keys and then create a key. And that should give you your API key. So once you have your API key for whichever platform you choose, just go back to OpenClaw and enter that. And then you can select whichever model you want. I think I'm going to go with 4.1. That should be good enough. And then it's going to ask us to set up a channel. This is how you're going to be communicating primarily with Moltbot. So the easiest one to set up is going to be Telegram. However, you can, again, do pretty much any of these. So I'm going to select Telegram, press enter. And while this loads up, let me open Telegram and show you what you have to do. So if I just open Telegram on my computer, you're going to have to go to Botfather. You can just search for Botfather here and just start a new conversation. Once you do that, you're going to have to write /new bot, and then you're going to have to give it a name and then a username. Make sure that the username ends with bot. And once you do that, it is going to give you an access token. So basically, you're going to have to copy this token. And if I just copy this, and we're going to have to paste it inside of our terminal. So I'm just going to paste this and press enter. And now our Telegram and our Moltbot has been connected. After that is done, it's asking if you want to configure skills right now. For now, I'm going to say no. For hooks as well, I'm going to say skip for now. Press enter. And finally, it's asking us how do we want to hatch our bot. So I'm just going to hatch in TUI. That should be fine. And you can see our agent has been started. So you can just chat with it. Your name is Viva. And my name is Nafe. And you can see that it just responded. It said its own name as Viva and mine is Nafe. And it's trying to chat more with you and learn more about, what you want, right? So that part is done. Now I want to cover how you want to open the GUI for this, because obviously there's only so much you can do with the TUI. In order to actually add skills and configure your bot to your liking, you are going to need the GUI. At least that's going to make it easier. And to open the GUI, it actually gives us a link. However, if I just copy and paste that link in my browser, you're going to notice that we're not really going to see anything. It's going to basically just say that the site cannot be reached. The reason for that is because this is actually a locally hosted server, and our Moltbot is actually running on our VPS, which is not local, right? It's running on Hostinger servers. What we're going to have to do is that we're going to basically create a gateway, which is going to allow us to open this website on our computer. I know that sounds pretty complicated. Trust me, it really is not. You just need to copy and paste a few commands and we should be good to go. So we're going to go back inside the terminal. And for this, we're going to be opening a new tab in our PowerShell. And in this, we're going to have to obviously open our VPS first. So just go back to your Hostinger, copy the root access, and basically paste it here, and obviously the password as well. Now, once that is done, we're going to be pasting in this command right here. You don't really need to understand what this does. I'm going to be leaving it in the description so you can just copy and paste it. But once you do that and press enter. All right, now once that is done, you should see something like this. If you don't see this, by the way, you're just going to have to write ClaudeBot gateway stop and then write this same command again. Then you should see this. Now, we just need to do one last step. Trust me, I know this is the hardest part, but it's just one more command and then we should be good. You're going to have to open another terminal window. And in this one, all you need to do is just paste in this command. Again, I'm going to be leaving this in the description once again. However, for this, what you're going to do is basically this part right here is your IP address. So you're going to have to get your own IP address. This is just mine, so it's not going to work for you. But the way you get your IP address is go to Hostinger and go down to IPv4 and just copy whatever it says here. Once you do that, you can just paste it in instead of this, and everything should be good. And then just enter your password and press enter. And now it should just be stuck here. That's perfectly fine. But now if you go back to your browser and refresh this, you can see that our GUI is working. You can chat with it here. So I'm just going to say hello, and it should respond to me just like I would expect it to. I think the only thing that's left is to finish our Telegram setup. So now if I go back to Telegram and if I click this link right here, this is the link that, is going to open our bot. So if I click start, so once you get this message, we're on the right track. All we need to do now is basically just copy this ClaudeBot pairing approved Telegram and then code. This code is going to be your pairing code. So you're going to open a new terminal window and with the same command, go inside your VPS, enter your password, and then in here, just write ClaudeBot pairing approved Telegram and then your pairing code. Once you do that, it's going to say approved. And now what's going to happen is if I go back to my Telegram and say, hey, it should respond to me. You can see it's typing and it's responding to me in the GUI as well. And also inside of Telegram. So our Telegram is set up. All right, now that our Telegram is set up, let's go ahead and dive into OpenClaw and sort of understand what it is. I know you all want to make projects. We are going to get started with that in just a bit, but we first need to understand how OpenClaw works and what, are some of the underlying things that you need to understand before you get started with, making different projects. So the first thing that I want to cover is skills. So skills are basically what makes OpenClaw do different things or perform different tasks. So in your dashboard, you can see that you have the skills tab over here. If you just click it, you can see that it's going to take you to this skills page, and you have a lot of built-in skills. You can see that all these are built-in skills, which you can just enable. And then you also have some skills that you make yourself. So this is just a skill that I made, just to test this out, but I'm going to be covering this in just a bit. So essentially a skill is just a markdown file, which has instructions on how to do how to perform a certain task. For example, you have a skill which tells you the weather in New York City, for example, right? Or the current time in New York City. It's going to have instructions on how to do that. I just googled OpenClaw skill MD just to show you guys an example of what exactly it is, and you can see right here. This is a markdown file basically. It just teaches the agent how to perform a certain task and what kind of input you should be expecting, what kind of output should you be giving to the user, just that kind of stuff. It just has, some instructions. Let's go ahead and make our own skills so we understand how skills are made. So we're just going to ask, OpenClaw, make a skill that tells me the current stock prices of Apple and Nvidia, for example, right? This is just a random, simple example that, it should be able to do. Let's go ahead and send this message. And now it should create a skill automatically, which then you can just ask it to use to give you, that information that you want. So we're just going to wait for it to make that skill, and I'll see you guys then. And now you can see that it completed this whole thing, it did a lot of stuff. And at the end, it just created this skill. Stock prices of Apple and Nvidia. It's just going to show us that. And you can see that the skill is stored in this skills folder, which is on our VPS. And you can see the skill is called stock prices, stock-prices. So now if we ask it for the Apple stock or Nvidia stock at any time, it should use that skill to give you the correct information. So now if I just open my Telegram, what I can do is I can say /skill and then space, and I'll write the exact name of that skill. It was stock-prices, right? So stock-prices. If I, invoke that skill, it should tell me the output of that skill. So let's wait for it to do it. And there you go. It just gives us the current prices of those stocks. So that's how you can create your own skills. Now, in most cases, you won't actually be creating your own skills yourself. You're going to be using skills that other people have created. And you can use this website called Claude Hub for that. So for that, you can just search for Claude Hub. And you can just go to the first website that comes up. And here you'll find a lot of skills that, people from the community have created. So if you just go to skills, you can see that there's so many different skills that you can add to your OpenClaw agent. Now, the caveat here is that, these skills can do pretty much anything on your computer. So make sure to download only the trusted ones. And you can see the number of downloads and everything here. So make sure to only download the trusted skills. Don't just download anything randomly. All right, now the next thing I want to talk about is a bit conceptual, but you need to keep in mind that OpenClaw basically has two main files that you can use to essentially store things about the agent and also yourself. So the first file I want to talk about is user.md. It's basically, again, a markdown file, which has information about you, the user. So for example, you work for a certain industry and you want OpenClaw to tailor its answers towards that. You can definitely do that. Just tell OpenClaw something like, I am a YouTuber who makes content on AI automation. Here's my channel link. So just giving it that context is going to improve the responses, and it's going to just give you more, give OpenClaw more context, about what you're trying to do, so it can tailor the answers based on that, right? That is the first file I want to talk about. The next file I want to talk about is memory.md. It is, again, another markdown file, which is basically going to store memory of, the whole chats. So every time you close OpenClaw, what it basically does is that it's going to store all the chats that you have currently into its own memory so it can reference them later on. And every time OpenClaw starts up, it basically starts up fresh and it gets all its memory from that specific file. Now you can obviously open the VPS and, edit that file manually, but, the whole point of OpenClaw is so that we can, do everything in this chatbot. And you can see that even for userMD, it did update the userMD with, my channel information and all that stuff. So if there's anything you want OpenClaw to store in its memory, just tell it to store that in its memory and it will do that. There's nothing else you really need to do. The next thing I want to cover is cron jobs. So cron jobs are sort of like alarms for your OpenClaw. If I just go to this cron jobs tab here, you can see that there's no cron jobs currently scheduled, but you can essentially set up repeating tasks, which are automatically going to be triggered by your OpenClaw agent here. So you can either create one manually or you can just tell OpenClaw to create one and it's going to do that for you automatically. I'm actually going to be using that method because it's it's just easier. So let's say OpenClaw had access to your email, right? Which we're going to add in just a bit. But what you can do is you can be like, every 10 minutes or every hour, for example, just go to my email, fetch new emails. And, if there's anything new, just alert me or triage my inbox and tell me, what's important, what's not important, that kind of stuff. If there's any task you want OpenClaw to do at a regular interval, you're going to set up a cron job. So let me just show you a quick example of this. We obviously don't know how to connect our Gmail account yet, so we're going to cover that in just a bit. But a simple example could be something like remind me to drink water every, minute. Okay. Just for example. Now I know this is a very, very simple example, but it's just going to give you an idea of how it really works and how, things work in the back end. So you can see that I created a cron job. And now if I go back to cron jobs, you can see that one is created right here. So every minute it's going to send you an alert inside of your chat. So if I just go back to chat, and as you can see, the reminder is here. But I ran into some issues when I was setting this up. I actually ran out of credits for Claude, which is actually, I'm glad it happened, because I just want to tell you guys that you need to be very careful when you're using OpenClaw, especially cron jobs or, something that is repeatedly running in the background. It can use a lot of credits really, really fast. So what I did was I just switched over to GPT-4o Mini, which is a much cheaper model. And by the way, if you're wondering how to switch a model, just tell OpenClaw, switch to XYZ model, and then it should do that automatically, assuming you do have your API key in place. If you don't have your API key, what you can do is you can go to your terminal again, and here you can just type OpenClaw onboard. Make sure that you are inside of your VPS, and this will take you through that entire onboarding process again. So I'm just going to say no to this, just exit out of that. But if you go through this process, it is going to ask you for your API keys and everything. So just add that, and then, just tell OpenClaw to switch to that model and use that. And with that, I think we have enough knowledge to start building our first project. We do know how skills work, how you can manipulate the user or the memory file, how cron jobs work and everything. Now I think we should be ready for our first project, which is going to be an email triage system. I'm going to be showing you guys how you can connect your Gmail account through a secure method, which is going to be using Zapier. I'll walk you guys through that entire process. It's going to be really, really simple. So without any further ado, let's get started with that project. All right, now traditionally when you want to connect your Gmail account to OpenClaw, the process is extremely complicated, and it's also extremely insecure as well. So what you need to do is you need to go to skills, and you just go to built-in skills, and you have to turn on this skill called GOG. I can just search for it. GOG. You can just enable this, but the problem with this is that it is pretty unsafe, and also it's extremely difficult to set up because you have to log into Google Console, you have to get your API keys and everything, and it is just a hassle to do that. So in this course, I'll be showing you guys a much better way using Zapier, which is much more secure, and also it is way, way easier to set up. You don't need any sort of API key. You just log into your Google account and it is set up for you. So let's go ahead and get started with that. I'll explain to you guys why that's more secure, and then we're going to get started with the implementation. Before we actually start, I just want to give you guys an overview of what exactly we're trying to do, how this approach works, and why this is a good approach. So traditionally, when you run OpenClaw, when you run CloudBot, it basically runs on your local computer. It has access to pretty much everything on your computer. So all the files, you're also storing all your API keys in here, and you can give it access to, read your emails, send emails, all that kind of stuff. Now, the main problem with this is security. Let's say you have an incoming email, you have a new email message, it comes in, your CloudBot reads the email. Let's say the email asks it to give, the hacker all your API keys, for example, right? The hacker can somehow convince OpenClaw to send them all the API keys. So it's just going to go inside, get all the API keys, and then send the email to the hacker. Now, this is a major, major security risk. So we're going to be doing two main things to mitigate this risk. Now, the way we fix this is by running it on a separate computer. This is the exact reason why you see a lot of people online buying Mac minis and, buying separate computers just to run OpenClaw. What we're going to be doing instead is going to be a cheaper solution, which is going to be to use a VPS, which is going to save a lot of cost and also is going to provide us much better security. So the files problem is solved. Now we have another problem on our hands, which is your API keys problem. Because OpenClaw has direct access to read your emails, to send your emails, you're going to have to add your Google API key. And similarly, if you add any other tools, you're going to have to add API keys for those tools, which are going to be stored inside of OpenClaw, which can expose them to potential hackers. So the way we fix that is actually pretty smart. We're going to be using something called Zapier and Zapier MCP servers. So let me explain how this works. What we need is basically a Zapier MCP server. So we're going to go to Zapier, we're going to ask it for an MCP server, and this is what it's going to give us. Okay. So I'm just going to move it here. Now, this is a Gmail Zapier MCP server. The reason why this is useful is because we can use it to give access to only certain tasks. So for example, we just want to give OpenClaw access to add labels to our emails, read our emails, and also just draft emails, for example, right? Not send emails. We're going to send emails with our approval. But what it also does is that it basically eliminates the need to store API keys inside of OpenClaw. We don't really need the API keys anymore, so I'm just going to remove that. Instead, our API keys, all of our API keys are going to be stored inside of Zapier, which, by the way, OpenClaw OpenClaw has no access to. OpenClaw only has access to the MCP server, which only has access to these three tools. It is physically impossible for it to do anything else other than these tools, right? Even if a hacker requests it to, they try to prompt inject, do anything, it just simply doesn't have access to the API keys because this is on their server. So this is a much safer approach, and surprisingly enough, it's also much easier to set up as well compared to, adding all these tools individually inside of OpenClaw, because OpenClaw, as I'm sure you guys are aware, is not that easy to set up, and adding API keys and all that stuff is pretty complicated. Zapier, on the other hand, is super easy to set up. So that's how this works. Without any further ado, let's jump in and I'll show you guys how to set this up. All right, so once you have OpenClaw up and running on your computer, all you need to do is just go to zapier.com/MCP. You're going to find a link to this in the description below, but once you're on this page, just click start building, and that's going to take you to your MCP servers. Now, I already do have an MCP server set up, but I'm going to show you guys how exactly you can set yours up. Just click new MCP server, and then you can select whichever client you're using. So in our case, we're using OpenClaw, but again, you can use Zapier MCP servers with pretty much any code editor or pretty much any AI platform that you can think of. But in our case, we're just going to select other, because we just need an MCP URL to connect. And then what you can do is you can add all your tools. So this is where Zapier really shines, because Zapier has more than 8,000 apps available. So if I just click add tool, you can see that we can add all of these things. We can integrate all of these apps. What we're primarily interested in today is the Gmail tool. So I'm going to add that. And this is exactly what I was talking about before. You can choose which tools you want to give it access to and which tools you want to omit. So I'm going to give it access to find email and add label to an email as well. I'm also going to give it access to create a draft reply and also create a draft. The important thing to note here is that I'm not giving it access to send email because I don't want it to just send emails without my approval. I think that's just, too risky. However, you can obviously choose to do that if you want, but I definitely would not recommend that. Once you've selected all the actions, you can just click connect. So that's pretty much all we need to do inside of Zapier. Now we're going to connect our Zapier MCP to OpenClaw. The way you do that is pretty simple again as well. And we're going to go to connect for this. And then we're going to say generate token and click generate token again. And now it's going to show you your URL with token. So this is what we're interested in. Option 2, URL with token. We're not really going to have to do this manually ourselves. That's the beauty of OpenClaw. It just does everything for you. So let me go back to OpenClaw and let me show you how I ended up doing this. All I did was, are you able to connect to Zapier MCP? Do note that I enabled a tool which is called MC Porter when I was setting up OpenClaw. If you don't have this tool enabled, all you need to do is go to skills and then search for MC Porter. MCP Porter, whatever that's called. There should be an option here that says enable, but assuming that that is done, all you need to do is just ask it, are you able to connect to Zapier MCP? And then it's going to make sure that all the tools and everything is available. And yes, it is. It just tells you that, yes, I can connect to Zapier MCP. Let me check what MCP servers are currently configured, all that stuff. And then it sees that no MCP servers are configured. And then you're just going to give it your MCP URL with token in the chat, and then it's going to do everything for you. Now make sure to treat this like a password, because obviously this is, you can think about it like your API key. So obviously you're going to have to keep this a secret, but you can see that it did all this work and it basically added the MCP server, and it also understood what kind of tools are available and what kind of tools are not available. So you can see that it says Gmail find email is available, create label is also available, and also create draft is available. Now this is the older MCP server that I had. I'm not going to be connecting this new one. I just want to show you guys how this works. But once that is done, all you need to do is just tell it what you want to do, and it should do everything by itself. So what I said was, whenever I get a new email, I want you to triage automatically, add a label, and surface actionable emails with draft responses for my approval. Do this every 3 minutes. Now, obviously 3 minutes is quite a bit. I was doing this just to test it, but you should probably do this once every 24 hours or once every 12 hours, because obviously this is going to eat up quite a bit of credits. So obviously I want you to use this with caution, but you can see that it set up a cron automation, and now everything was done by itself. I really didn't have to do anything. Trust me, guys, this is super simple. And then it told me that the email bot is working. It's checking my email every 3 minutes. And if I open my Telegram, you can see that it successfully completed the task, and it gave me, I just sent myself a random email just to, test this. And you can see that it highlights the issue and it tells me the actions that it did. So it created a label. It also applied the appropriate label to the email, and then it created a draft response and everything. And it basically sent me a summary of everything that it did. And if I go to my Gmail, you can see that the email draft is right here. And I hope you guys are starting to get an idea of how powerful this is. You can literally connect this with, let's say, Google Calendar, for example, and schedule meetings with potential clients, all automatically. You can even use this to do, let's say, cold outreach, for example. You can have a Google Sheets file with, a list of potential clients, and you can use the Gmail MCP server to send all of them emails and do cold outreach and even follow up with them on, specified intervals. You can even connect this to, let's say, your Slack to give you regular updates or something like that. So yeah, the purpose of this project was just to introduce you guys to this setup, using OpenClaw and Zapier. I really hope you guys can experiment with this and come up with different use cases and come up with different, solutions. One thing that I would actually recommend you to do is just go to ChatGPT, be like, I'm using OpenClaw as my agent and I'm using Zapier MCPs to connect to different tools. Just give me different use cases or to give me different, builds that I can make using this setup to make my life easier, or let's say, earn more money or anything like that. Just do that and ChatGPT will give you a lot of good ideas for, things to build. But I think that brings this project to an end. Let's move on to our next project. All right, now our next project is very, very interesting because in this, we're basically going to be building a voice agent, which will call people on your behalf. So for example, in this example that I'm about to show you, can you call Abdul, and I've entered the number, and tell him that I'll be coming to the shop for a haircut tomorrow at 3 p.m. This is going to be especially helpful for, businesses, because oftentimes you can't text businesses, you have to call them and you don't want to call people, right? What you can do is you can just enter this, and I entered my own number, so I should be getting a call on my phone. So I can show you guys a demo of this, and I am getting a phone call on my phone, and if I just pick it. Hello?
Hello, I'm calling on behalf of Nafay. I wanted to check if you have availability for a haircut tomorrow at 3 p.m. Could you help me with that?
Yeah, that time should be available.
Great, thank you. Could you please confirm the booking for Nafay tomorrow at 3 p.m. for a haircut? Do you need any additional information from me to secure the appointment?
No, that should be it. Thank you. So as you can see, it did make a call on, my behalf, and it's going to be a pretty simple build. We're going to be using Retail AI and OpenClaw. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So the first thing you want to do is actually go to Retail and set up our voice agent. So for that, you're going to have to go to retailai.com. Alternatively, you can also go to the link in the description and just create an account or log in. Once you have your account created, you're going to be on the dashboard. You can just click create an agent and select voice agent. Once you do that, make sure to select single prompt agent because you want to keep it very, very simple, and start from blank should be fine. You can press create and that should take you to the Retail AI agent builder. Now this is where we're going to add our prompt for our agent, which is going to give it instructions on, what to talk about and how to talk. And then you can obviously test your agent here. You can customize your agent completely using the speech settings. You can even change your voice here. Your model can also be changed, and your language, of course, can also be changed. So let's get started with first adding our prompt. So what I recommend you to do is use ChatGPT for generating retail prompts because it's really good at doing that. And it also adds a lot of information that if I were to, for example, write my prompt myself, I would probably miss, right? So what I did was I went to ChatGPT and I asked it to write me a prompt for a Retail AI agent, which is going to be acting like my personal assistant. And it can call, different businesses. You can book appointments. It can reserve tables at restaurants, for example. It should be able to do all those things, in an outgoing call. And so this is the prompt that it gave me. I will be leaving this prompt in the description, by the way. If you just want to copy this and clone this exact agent, you can do that, but I'm just going to be copying this whole thing and I can paste it inside of Retail. Now if you read this, you can see that it says you're a human personal assistant. I'm going to be changing this to Nafay's personal assistant because it will introduce itself as Nafay's personal assistant, which is important. And your goal is to talk about this specific request. Now this right here, wrapped in these two curly braces, is actually a dynamic variable. Dynamic variables are basically variables which are going to be passed in when you call the API for Retail. If you don't know what that means, that's totally fine. We're going to be understanding that in just a bit. But basically, what this does is that this place will be populated by whatever we want this agent to talk about. So for example, if you want to book a haircut appointment, this variable right here is going to say, for example, book a haircut appointment for 2 p.m. on, a certain Tuesday, whatever. It will have instructions on what the agent is supposed to do. And I also added this example, starting sentence. So I'm just going to be changing this. I'm calling on behalf of Nafay, and then you can obviously, state the request. And it also gives us some examples on, what it could be, what it should be able to do. And I think this whole thing should be good. You can obviously read through it if you want. Once again, I will be leaving this exact prompt in the description so you guys can just copy this. In the welcome message, we want to make sure that AI speaks first because it's going to be an outgoing call. And with that, that is pretty much all you need to do inside of Retail. You can obviously change your speech settings and just fine tune your agent to be exactly the way you want it to be. However, for the purposes of this demo, this should be good enough. Then we can just go ahead and publish this. And what you're going to have to do here is you're going to have to attach an outbound phone number. So I'm just going to come down to select phone number and I'm going to check the outbound phone number. And I will be selecting this number that I own inside of Retail. I'll be showing you guys how to get your own number in just a bit. But once you have your number, you can just select it and then click publish. Now your agent should be ready. The way you get your number, by the way, is by going back to the home page. And then you can go to phone numbers and you can just click plus and buy a new number. Numbers are pretty cheap. Standard numbers are $2 a month and that should be good enough. Or you can also get a toll-free number as well if you'd like. But you can just select whichever number you want from this list and click purchase. Then you should be able to buy your number. So once you get your number, you're going to have to go to your agent. And then you can, when you're publishing it, make sure to select that number as your outbound phone number. Now, once that is done, your voice AI agent is pretty much ready Now, all we need to do is we need to basically tell OpenClaw how to trigger this agent, or in programming language, you call this how to call the API of this agent. We're going to teach OpenClaw how to do that, and it's going to be a pretty simple prompt, which is right here. So the prompt is, whenever I send you a name and a phone number of someone, you should call them by calling this retail AI API. The API is down here. Depending on the context I give you, populate the dynamic variables. Name will be the name of the person you're calling. What to talk about is the topic of discussion. For example, booking an appointment or something. Make sure to include enough context so that the agent can complete the task. And now here we have this API request. If you don't know what an API request is, it's a way for a computer or an AI agent to talk to another platform. In this case, it's going to be OpenClaw talking to Retail without you having to manually go and trigger a call. So if you want to build this exact agent that we're building, I'm going to be leaving this in the description so you can just copy this exact thing. You don't need to do anything else. However, if you do want to customize this and you want to add other fields as well, or if you want to go, deeper into this and customize it more, I'm going to be leaving a link to the docs for this as well in the description. And as you can see, there's so many different fields that you can populate, and you can, so many customizations that you can do. But for us, this should be good enough. The only thing you're going to have to change in this, there's actually two things. For the first thing is going to be your API key. So you can see that this is my API key. I'm obviously going to delete this after I finish recording this video, and you should also treat your API key like a password and keep it completely secret. But how do you get your Retail API key? It's pretty simple. You go back to Retail, go back to Home, and go down to Settings, API keys, and just go ahead and add a key, and that should give you an API key here, which you can then copy and paste it instead of this. Once that is done, you're also going to have to update your from number. So your from number is going to be the number that you attach to your agent, which you purchased from Retail. And your to number, doesn't matter whatever you add here, it will be replaced by the number you give it, when you're telling OpenClaw to call someone. And your dynamic variables, again, this what to talk about is basically right here. If I go back to my agent, you can see that whatever OpenClaw adds here, it's going to be essentially copy and pasted over here. And we also have this name dynamic variable. So you can also add, for example, you can add a line. You can be like, you are calling, and inside these two curly braces, you can write name, and that will automatically be added as a dynamic variable. And whatever value OpenClaw populates over here, it is going to replace this name right here. All you need to do is copy this whole thing, go to OpenClaw and paste it in, and then it will basically create a tool for it, and you should be good to go. Now, if I ask it, to call Abdul, I just added my own number for testing purposes. So call Abdul and ask him if he is available to book a haircut appointment tomorrow at 2 p.m. All right, so now I should be calling my phone. Let's see if it works or not. And as you guys can see on my screen as well, I am getting a phone call. So if I just accept it.
I am calling on behalf of Nafay. I was wondering if I could book a haircut appointment for tomorrow, February 17th at 2 p.m. Is that time slot available?
So as you can see, it's calling the barber on my behalf and it's booking an appointment. And again, this is a very basic and bare bones setup. You can customize this and you can add so many different things on this. Just to give you an example, what you can do is you can go to Retail and you have this whole section of post-call data extraction. What you can do with this is basically once you are done with the call, it's going to extract information from that call, and you can even send that back to OpenClaw. You can set that up. It's going to be pretty simple. Just ask OpenClaw how to do it and it should tell you, everything. And that is the reason why OpenClaw is super powerful. It can do a lot of things on your behalf, and it's super easy to set up as well. Another thing that you could also do is probably hook this up with Google Sheets. So if you go to skills, you're going to find this skill called GOG. So you can see there's this skill called GOG. You can set this up and you can basically hook this up to your Google Calendar, for example. You can hook this up with a Google Sheets file. So instead of, telling it in chat who to call, you can just add that number and name to a Google Sheets file and it should automatically call them. You can also connect this with Telegram. So you can just have a Telegram bot on your phone, and whenever you tell it to call someone, it's going to do that automatically. The possibilities really are endless. And the purpose of me making this video was just to show you guys how to get started with this, how to sort of, make a basic agent so you guys can build upon that. All right, so the next use case I want to show you guys is actually very simple to set up, but it's actually insanely powerful. One of the most practical use cases for OpenClaw that I've found so far. And the use case is, imagine every day you wake up, let's say at 9 a.m. and you get a text message on your phone, and it's basically a summary of all the important AI related news from, the day before, or maybe the week before, whatever, however you want to set it up, you can do it. But it's going to basically summarize all the important news that you want. Now, I set it up to give me AI related news, but you can basically receive news about anything pretty much. Let's say you're interested in politics, you can get political news and all that kind of stuff, right? So it will basically give you a summary of what happened the last day. And also you can read more here as well. And it's going to give you a link to an article to read or something like that, right? So this system is really easy to set up. We just need to set up a cron job, and we need to connect an API as well, but that's going to be like pretty much all there is to it. But you can see that it does give you a pretty nice summary every single day. So the prompt that I gave OpenClaw for this was actually as simple as this. Every day at 9 a.m., send me a summary of important AI related news from the previous day. You can use Brave API to search the web. Now, this Brave API part is something that I actually want to show you guys because this might be a bit tricky. So I've already set up the Brave API, but before you send this prompt, what you need to do is you want to go to your terminal. You need to basically paste in this command, OpenClaw configure -- section web. So this is what you need to paste in. Make sure that you are inside of your VPS. If you are not inside of your VPS, it's not going to work. But once you press enter, it should basically let you configure web search. So we're going to select local, and then enable web search is going to be yes. And then it's going to ask you for a Brave search API key. Now we're going to have to get a Brave search API key, which is pretty simple to get. I'm just going to search for Brave API. Make sure to not click any of the sponsored links because they have scams oftentimes. But just make an account here. I think I already do have an account. But once you have an account set up, you can just go to, I believe it was subscriptions, and make sure to get a subscription. So the plan that we want to get is the search plan. It's $5 per 1,000 requests, which is, pretty reasonable if you think about it. And just go to API keys once you have, set up the plan. And then you can just add an API key here, copy it, and then go back to your terminal and paste your API key over here and enable web search. Just say yes. And then it should be, everything should be set up. Now what you need to do is just give it this prompt. And once you do that, it should set up a cron event for you, a cron job for you. And then after that, every day at 9 a.m., it's going to give you, the summary. In order to test this, what you can do is you can go to the cron jobs tab, go down to your cron job, and just click run. And that's going to do like a sample run, a test run for you guys. And in just a couple of minutes, you can see that it did give me a message. And you can see that all the news here is different from all this news, right? So there obviously were more than 5 events, that happened. So again, in the prompt, you can refine it further and you can be like, give me the top 10 most, recent news, or, top 10 most relevant news for me, because OpenClaw has the user MD file. It knows about you. It knows what industry you work in and everything. So using all that information, it can fine tune the search and it can give you relevant information to your industry and to your job and what you really want to, know about. So the system is extremely easy to set up, but it's also really, really powerful. So I just wanted to show you guys how you can set that up. Now, what makes this even more powerful is you can actually build upon this. So alongside the news, you can also, get a summary for your email, for example, or any other data that you want, every single day at 9 a.m. All you need to do is just, modify this prompt, connect it with the Zapier MCP server, and it should have, it should give you, pretty nice summaries. So that's what I wanted to cover. So I really hope you guys do experiment with this, and I hope you guys, do build your agents. If you do, just let me know in the comments below, so maybe other people can also, benefit from that and get ideas for different use cases. But I hope you guys, experiment with this and build something creative. And that brings this course to an end. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and I really hope you guys learned something new as well. If you have any questions, be sure to let me know in the comments below, and I'll definitely help you out. If you have any suggestions for different projects to make, you can also leave them in the comments to help other people out. And with that being said, I will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.